Thank you. We'll move now to the reports. First report, 8.1, fixing off the common seal. Thank you, Councillor Parker. Seconder, Councillor Oliver. Put that to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carry. Okay, thank you. Just before we go to 8.2, noting that membership of local government New Zealand 8.12, we do actually have zooming in at some stage. And the next that you let us know, so that will probably move up. 8.2, adoption of the 2023 meetings calendar. Councillor Burtmoo would like to move the motion. We have a seconder. Councillor Jackson. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Yeah. Just going to move ahead. 8.3, establishment of council committees. Yes, if you could actually. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So here, over the course of the next few meetings, a number of committees and so on will be established as council commences its triennium. In this case, the Mayor has noted, pursuant to section 41A3, that he's establishing the Directors and Trustees Appointments Committee and the Hearings Committee. The functions and delegations of those committees are noted in the paper, and Mr. Deputy Mayor, it is really for the Council to receive and note the establishment of those committees.
Thank you, Reid. So, would somebody like to move that motion for us? Thank you. Councillor Parker, seconded. Councillor Burt. Put it to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. 8.4, appointments of chair and deputy chairs to committees of council. I'll speak to talk to this too.
Thank you again, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I suppose you have a committee, you've got to have members who then sit on those committees, someone to chair it. So the Mayor has set out his recommendations there, noting the appointments for it. It is open in terms of the deputy mayor, chairperson of those committees. It is open to council to choose to either vote on them, or the delegations of those committees do enable them to appoint their own chairpersons. But the Mayor has asking council to first of all note the appointment in terms of the chairs, and then to approve the recommendations for the deputy chairpersons of those committees. So Mr. Deputy Mayor, you may wish to ask someone to move and second on recommendations number 1 and number 2.1.
Thank you. There is also, if I read in there, a suggestion for a member appointed to the Lions Caroline Bay Trust. That can be decided here too. Is that 8.5, is it? It's still on 8.4, sorry, it's the next one.
8.5, I think, yes.
Well, would somebody like to move that recommendation for 8.4? As recommended by the Chair, thank you. Councillor Parker, seconder. Councillor Scott. and put it to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried, thank you. So that was 8.5 I was referring
Yes.
to, that one. Hand that one back to you again, Pete, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So look, again, council, and again, there will be 2 council meetings, a number of these appointments coming up where organisations seek to have representation from council's governing body on those particular organisations. And again, some of them are external, such as the Lions Caroline Bays Trust or the Strengthening Families. Others of them are internal committees, such as the Audit and Risk Committee. And so the council has been asked again to consider the Mayor's recommendation as to the appointments for those. In terms of the Lions Caroline Bay Trust, it's 1 member appointed by council, same for Strengthening Families. You can see that in Strengthening Families, the Mayor is suggesting himself, but it is open to for the council to decide the membership of the Lions Caroline Bay Train Trust. If there is more than 1 nomination for that, council should decide as to which voting system it would like to follow. But you may wish to see whether there's more than one nomination for that.
Sure, thank you, Pete. So, just before moving ahead with the recommendation on strengthening the Lions Caroline Bay Train Trust, a member appointed by council, do we have any thoughts about that? Would somebody like to move a motion including that?
I'd like to move that Councillor OJ be the person elected to that role. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burt. Seconder for Councillor Burt's motion. Councillor Oliver. Put that to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried, thank you.
I just want to move recommendation 2, that council approves the Mayor's recommendation, just for clarity.
Sure, yep, and recommendation 2, that council approves the Mayor's recommendation of Councillor Pye to the Audit and Risk Committee. Thank you, Councillor Burt. Councillor Oliver. Put it to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried, thank you. So we don't need number 3. Move now to (8.6). Invite Andrew Dixon to talk to this one, please. Thank you, Andrew. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and councillors. So this is Downlands Water Supply Scheme covers 3 different districts. It's Waimate, Mackenzie and Timaru, and supplies consumers in each of those districts. Timaru has certainly the main number of consumers, and in fact 82% of the shareholding of Timaru. And so there is an agreement in place that the management of the scheme is actually run by Timaru, but there is a governance joint committee. And that committee is made up of basically 1 member from Waimate, 1 from Mackenzie, 1 joint member appointed by Mackenzie and Waimate, and then the other 5 from Timaru District Council. So hence you can see that the governance side of things is heavily weighted towards Timaru District Council. In addition, the agreement does not requires that the committee be reconstituted following the election. So this is 2 parts of this, is basically reconstituting the committee and then also deciding the membership of the committee. So it has been recommended that Timaru appoints the Deputy Mayor as our elected member, and then there is 4 other members that can be appointed by the council, and they do not have to be councillors as such, they can be others. So we have a recommendation there is that of those 4 other ones, chairperson of the infrastructure committee, and 2 others that have to, the mayor, sorry, and then 2 others. So we'd need to decide which of those other 2 should you, and assuming you accept the other recommendations. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew? No?
Andrew, so you're saying that the other 2 members can be community board members. So do we need to give our community board reps a chance to go and liaise with the board members before we make those nominations?
Yeah, you are correct. It can be a community board member. In fact, the last committee was had 1 representative of the Pleasant Point Community Board on it. So.
Thank you. Any more questions for Andrew? Any discussion? No, so we're looking at each of the recommendations firstly. If we can just, somebody could move that we do reconstitute this joint standing committee. Somebody like to move that one, please. Thank you, Councillor Burt. Councillor Pye, to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Against, carried. And number 2, Councillor Parker, did you want to move something along the lines?
Oh, I'm just wondering whether you've had an opportunity to speak to your community board members and Pleasant Point to see if there's any interest, gauging any interest to join the Downlands Committee.
There was some discussion last night, wasn't there, Councillor Pye, about that specifically? Do you remember?
There's a, through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, there's a meeting with the Pleasant Point Community Board. It's its inaugural meeting this evening, so those conversations could probably occur at that time when they're meeting. So, but it's still open to council to offer that a Pleasant Point Community Board member is offered a position, but without naming which one. So that is open to council to do that.
I'd be happy to add that as a motion.
Thank you. So the motion from Councillor Parker, do you have a seconder? Yes. Councillor Burt. Put it to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Can I say, just so that we're clear, so it is 2B appoints the Mayor, the Chairperson of the Infrastructure Committee, and 2 as additional members to the Downlands Joint Committee, 1 of which should be a member from the Pleasant Point Community Board.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. So you haven't needed to go. And then there's 1 other additional member.
Do we want?
We'll need to appoint, 1 other person.
So we can appoint, do we have to appoint that person today?
You should appoint, so you, a person today, or at least, yes, a position.
It would be helpful to appoint a person today because the committee will be meeting soon and the business of it carries on. So, Councillor Burt.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Councillor Scott for that role. Add that to the motion.
Perfect. And seconded by?
I'll just need to check first. Am I conflicted being a user on the scheme? I'm on the Downlands scheme where I live. Is it helpful? Okay. Damn it. No, just kidding.
Can I have a seconder for that motion then, please? Thank you, Councillor Parker. Put that to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Dixon. the updated delegations manual 8.7. Do you want to speak to that, please? I'm just going to find the page myself.
Jason.
Thank you. All right, Jason, to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So the Delegations Manual was adopted by Council in August 2021. The Delegation Manual includes sort of the delegation framework. It includes all the governance delegations, the financial delegations, the statutory delegations, and also the non-statutory delegations. So it's quite an important document. And so every year the Chief Executive has to report back to Council on the changes, whether new delegations or changes, on an annual basis. And so this report talks to the changes that the CE has approved. There's three types: changes to position titles, changes requested to existing delegations, and any other new delegation changes. They're attached as the appendix, so happy to take any questions on those.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions? Would somebody like to move the adoption of the report, please? Thank you, Councillor Parker. Seconded. Councillor Booth, put it to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason. 8.8. That'd be lovely. And to 8.8, we'll invite our Chief Executive to speak to that, please.
Yeah. So thank you. The annual meeting for Venture Timaru is coming up, and so while all councillors are invited to attend as representatives of the shareholder, that's the council, you should appoint one as your proxy to vote on matters that come before the annual meeting, and a second as an alternate proxy in the event that for some reason the proxy is unavailable. And we note that it is good practice if current directors of Venture Timaru, and it will be the same for the next item in terms of Timaru District Holdings Limited, if current directors are not the proxy. So you may wish, Mr Deputy Mayor, to offer some suggestions or invite from the floor.
Thank you, Bede. Well, I do know that myself and the Mayor are attending. Other councillors attending perhaps that may want to stand in as being a proxy. So you can't know. Right, well, I'll move then that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor are the proxy and the alternative proxy. Seconder. Councillor Burt, put it to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Likewise, 8.8, same situation really, isn't it?
It is. It's
8.9.
yeah. You might just want to move, 8.9. Yeah, it is. It's rinse and repeat.
Yeah, 8.9. I'll move that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, the proxy and the alternate proxy. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Parker. Put it to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much.
Yes, they're just available now. So, one moment. Are they available now?
Not yet.
Oh,
Then should
just
we?
I've just missed a call. Jackie, you able to come here with me? Just missed a call from the chief. Can I just explain what's happening? So just to keep everyone informed, the President Stuart Crosby and the Chief Executive Susan Freeman-Greeman of Local Government New Zealand are going to come into the meeting remotely. I see I've just missed a call from them, so I was going to ask Jackie to contact them. I understand their Councillor Shannon, I understand their availability was limited, so we may just wish to see whether they're ready to dial in immediately, so that this matter, membership of Local Government New Zealand, would then be moved up the agenda. Pardon?
Locked before it got me to hit one. Bring it back.
Yeah. So we might just wish to adjourn for a moment or two to see if they're ready to dial in.
Thank you, everyone. So we are moving item 8.12 forward to enable Susan Freeman Green and Stuart Crosby from Local Government NZ. Welcome. And I will invite Susan. She's going to speak. Susan, you can introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Susan Freeman Green, Chief Executive of LGNZ. I have just about 1 minute ago spoken to Stuart, who is logging on now. He wants to make the opening remarks. Here he is. So speak of Stuart. Here he is. So are you happy that I pass back to him?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Welcome, Stuart.
Oh, good afternoon. Is that you, Deputy Mayor Scott?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Well, look, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity for Susan and I to be part of the debate prior to making a decision to rejoin LGNZ. And I want to thank you, Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity. Just going back in time, Mayor Nigel has been in reasonably constant communication over this matter over time, and we certainly did understand the rationale in the first instance, why to leave. But, you know, we are now in new times, and we certainly look forward for the opportunity for Timaru District Council to rejoin LGNZ. As I've been saying at zone and sector meetings of recent times, both prior to the election, elected members and now after the election, you know, we do live in very disruptive times in our world of local government here in New Zealand. And it's imperative, I think, that we are collegial, that we are all members of LGNZ, and that in particular we debate the issues, we support each other We will have our differences from time to time, but I've never known such a disruptive environment in our sector in my considerable time in local government. So if ever there was a time for us to be as one and also disagree from time to time, this is right now. You're very much aware of the challenges that Timaru is facing, the South Island is facing, New Zealand is facing, in fact, the world is facing. And again, I just reiterate, the LGNZ that we see now and still evolving is completely different to the one I suggest even 24 months ago. And I do acknowledge particularly our CE, Susan Freeman-Green, and the team for pushing hard to change the manner in which we operate. And at the governance level, I too are pushing hard to make sure that LGNZ is fit for purpose for this challenging time we find ourselves in, and in particular for the future again, for the future as we move forward. So yes, we have learned some lessons on our approach to certain matters, and I guess that manifested itself at a very high level at our AGM, where there was a remit to say that on very high level strategic issues that LGNZ must engage with its broader community, as we will do. And they were just lessons from the past, which we and how we have changed. And then very much looking forward to any questions, Deputy Mayor Scott, prior to your council having a conversation and debate around its membership to LGNZ. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Stuart. And likewise, I just want to start by acknowledging our learning through the event that catalysed your departure from LGNZ. I really want to acknowledge that it was important that we take the lessons from that, and we really are incredibly thoughtful now and about how we can, if you like, constantly shift us to a really strong participatory membership body, and that, we're encouraging people to engage with us, all our members to engage with us, to hear. So we hear and learn what's important to you. On a broader perspective, of course, we're in the process of voting in our new National Council now. So Stuart remains president till elections in July. We don't have a vice president at the moment because our vice president, Hamish, wasn't re-elected. But right now we're going through all the election processes in the zones and the sectors to choose our National Council. So we will have a new National Council really soon. We do. I mean, there's about us sticking together, but also I think the whole local government whānau misses out if they don't have the experience that you bring into the room. So we want together to make sure that we help local democracy really thrive and really be relevant for everyone going forward. A number of things, you know what we do and you know what we don't do, and we really do want to answer questions, but we do have with our revised team a really much broader approach than we've had in the past around not only the strong advocacy and the expert advocacy people, but we've broadened that to include really strong media, really strong political kind of advice and links to government, as well as a strong storytelling component, and those pieces, as well as a whole new program or thinking around how we engage with the sector, with sort of refreshed zones and sector groups and a whole new development program. So we're excited about what can be possible. We think our role as facilitators of networking is huge. We're delighted to invite your mayor to our induction, and I'm sorry he wasn't able to make it. Even though you weren't a member, we did want to extend that invitation, because this is the start of a new triennium, and there's opportunity for everyone to get to know each other. So we want to hear, obviously we would love you to rejoin us. And then if you do, we'd love to hear from you about what you need from us. In fact, we'd like to hear that anyway today, regardless. I think we want to do more listening than talking, so that's enough from me for now.
Thank you very much, Susan and Stuart. I'll put it to the councillors that might have some questions for you. Just a reminder, if you do ask a question, if you please make sure your mic is on so that they can hear you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge that I'm a first term councillor, so just have a couple of questions. One in particular, obviously.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, we've got you now.
Okay. Oh gosh, now I'm very loud. Okay, sorry. So LGNZ engaged extensively with central government on the Three Waters reform, because that's obviously why we're here today. And my understanding is the engagement took place largely unseen by your members. So it's nice to hear, Stuart, that you guys have had an opportunity to reflect and look at different ways and pathways forward. But my question is, Stuart, you talked about your communication with community. I presume community you mean membership, because that is why we're here today.
Yes. Through the councils to the community and vice versa. So through the community, through the councils to LGNZ. Can I just pick up on a very short version of the history, if I may, with regard to Three Waters? I see it as three parts. First of all, there was an engagement process from the Department of Internal Affairs, who are managing the Three Waters project, that was probably going on for about 18 months. Then LGNZ was put in a very difficult position. We had to sign a non-disclosure agreement before we could even negotiate anything with the government of the day, and that was purely because there was a large amount of money at stake, and it had not gone to cabinet. So we had two choices. We could have stepped outside and said no, do nothing, and not being able to advocate, even behind closed doors, as it turned out, on behalf of our sector. We chose, and it was a long debate, to get inside that room and debate with the government to seek the best outcome as best we could, bearing in mind you have a government that is in complete power with no coalition partners. And I still believe that that was the right decision. So we're in a difficult position. The reality is we could not, on that matter, engage with our sector. After that, though, I think we failed, and we've admitted that, and as president, I take responsibility for this. We failed to properly explain our position. And if I reflect back now and I look at the heads of agreement, we would go through the same process of one, agreeing there's a case for change, agreeing the objectives of the program, agreeing there had to be a process, but we've always disagreed with the model. And this is what we've failed to do, I think, in the early days to our sector. And we've understood that. And so I hope we're never ever put in that position again by any government. I don't think we will be. So that was the lesson learned, particularly about one, how the tenor of that agreement could be read, and secondly, post that, how we didn't work it through with our sector. So that was the major learnings on that issue. The evidence to say that we learned from that was in the RM space, where again, we were able to engage with our sector. We've been able to work with the government to help nuance and shape whatever they're going to come up with in about 2 weeks in the first bill. So that's been the journey as we've worked through developing a relationship with the government of the day to help shape legislation that will actually work on the ground. That's a very short version of the events, but Susan might want to add to that.
Yeah, I think I think the only things that I would add to that are that you know, talking to the government, but the bit that we didn't, and negotiating, I think we even used that word, but what we didn't make clear is like, you know, and the point of that was to get the, you know, like basically if the government's going to make this mandatory, which, you know, unfortunately with the majority government, as Stuart said, was their right, then we wanted to make sure that anything that came out of that system was as good as possible for the sector in every shape and form. You know, clearly that's not how that process landed. And I've had many moments reflecting on that. The National Council did make sure that they didn't compromise individual councils' own ability to advocate for their position strongly, and also carved out the key issues that we had been already hearing that were absolutely not okay with the model around governance, accountability, around the spatial planning integration, and around local voice, 3 of the 4 of them. So, you know, like Stuart is right. We've never been holus bolus supportive of the model. I guess we took a bit of a pragmatic view, and we didn't do that well in terms of the things that Stuart's talked about. That's what we've learnt from, and we are really determined, and I'm pretty sure the new National Council will be as well, to build on linking, you know, making sure that these big crunchy things, and actually all things, we engage with our members, our community of members as well on. We're thinking, just even on that, we're even thinking about how we had our first meeting yesterday, first sector meeting. We had a metro meeting yesterday, and I know that's a different meeting, but we're about to start the rural and the provincial and the regional meetings as well. But we started that meeting by saying, okay, what are the priorities? You know, here are these big sweeping bits of reform. Here are other things that are going on. What are your priorities, metros, for what do you want to focus on over the triennium? What would you like us to focus on with your hat on? And we're determined to do that with each of the sector groups, because together then we'll build a much stronger advocacy position. And we're also planning to come together as a whole sector for one of our sets of meetings next year. So we have space carved out for the rural and provincial meetings, as well as for the regional, as well as for metros, as well as a day where we can, you know, see what the nuances are from each, to see if we can come up with a collective national perspective view on any particular issue, whatever they are, and at the time, because they're moving a lot.
I wish I had a question. The key here is that we've never really, I mean, you've given us, I acknowledge that you've come here today and you've said that things are changing. And I think after that we lost you. Well, I certainly did, because you're talking about advocacy within the tent. So the government divided and conquered by setting up a process by which you had to sign off in confidentiality and everything. After that, it was a complete breakdown. You know, you talk about that advocacy, and well, it couldn't happen in that process, and it didn't appear to. And you've used the word nuance so many times. This is not about nuance. This is not about subtlety. This is about a system that, right to this day, as it stands today, is not acceptable to the majority of our memberships. Collectively, we are an exceptional lobby group, and that was lost in that whole process, and it was lost, unfortunately, by our executive. And I'm not sure whether your explanation now gives us any comfort. You know, I'd like to, at this stage, I'd like to acknowledge the previous council for holding the line, for sending that message, and for Timaru having the strength of character to continue to do so up until today. That was a very clear message to central government. It was to the LGNZ and to the other councils, and we've stood our line and we've led from the beginning. I think that needs to be acknowledged. There can't be any nuance about this. It needs to be a very strong, clear message, and I know there is money on the table, and they're using that as that leverage again to say you may miss out on this. That makes that there. It smacks to me of bribery. It smacks to me of a situation that it's not enabling. It's not. It's forcing us into a situation. And unless that changes, unless you can say that's going to change, and I suppose that's my question to you, is that going to change? Are we going to see a clear, strong message going back to central government that collectively councils do not agree with this proposition? Thank you.
Well, I can tell you we've already said that. We said it in our submission to the Select Committee right up front. I've said it to the Prime Minister, I've said it to the Minister of Local Government on numerous occasions. I've said it to our sector on numerous occasions that we've identified that. So, you know, we're happy to share our submission on that we did put that out right up front, that we did not agree, this LGNZ, with the model.
And again, maybe just speak that nuance aspect. Nuance is not subtlety at all here. We need to be extremely strong about this, and we need to make sure that. And we can't be in a better time. We all know going into an election year, and potentially as a strong lobby group, a lot of constituent MPs will be actually shaking in their boots a bit and saying, hold on, what does this mean for me? Because there's quite a bit of me when it comes to central government. So we need to make sure that that is a real thing and lobby hard. So anyway, again, I acknowledge what you've said, and I acknowledge the fact that these changes are being made and hopefully will be consistent, and we can be part of that hopefully going forward at some stage. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess if I can just add to that, it's really important, you know, that the membership advise, in a way, dictate through National Council what it wants out of local government New Zealand. And again, I can only reiterate that, one, we're going to have quite a different National Council. I have instigated a review of the rules of National Council and its governance board, in part as a reflection of the difficulty we found ourselves in. And I think there is, and that started, by the way, and that will be an engagement, obviously, with the membership, because they'll determine what the rules are. And in particular, the objectives of LGNZ through National Council. How is it going to hear those voices, numerous voices I might add, of the membership, how it's going to make decisions, etc. So I can only just re-emphasise that the LGNZ you saw 2 years ago, the LGNZ you see now, and the LGNZ that you'll see in 2 years' time will be evolving and be quite different. Because we weren't fit for purpose for the operating environment that we're in with major legislative change. We've never had to deal with this before. And so it's been a learning exercise, I can assure you.
Thank you. Councillor Booth?
Hi, Stuart and Susan. Councillor Alan Booth. I've been to one of your meetings, which was probably brief, but it was quite enjoyable, and it was great to have all those other councillors, I guess, sitting around the room and discussing things. I know that was at the outset of the Three Waters. I think you probably underestimated the fact that you are the peak body of the local government group, and you've probably underestimated the fact that the government, while they tied you up in knots in regards to secrecy agreements, etc., I think you underestimated the fact that that's the time that actually you need to push back, and that would have had a more profound effect on the government when they were going about how they were developing the Three Waters. And so I guess I'm still probably quite disappointed in the fact that that occurred. Being an industry body, you're supposed to represent the people, the members within your group. And when they're not consulted and you enter into agreements on the side, go to the AGM, sign the MOU prior and sit down and as if nothing's happened. It was unbelievable. So I guess unless things have changed and the people have changed, these are just words, and I'm quite concerned. I can't see the point, and unless there's some major changes, and within the organisation, the people heading it, and the board, the ease within the government manoeuvred you around is still there. It's still possible. So, that's really what I've got to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So what would you like to see change?
Well, I see I guess you're still the president and the chief executive's still there, and obviously the membership within down below, the governing body, they should be elected by members who are wanting to ensure they're heard and represented, and I'd like to think that is actually what needs to happen.
I'll introduce Chief Executive. Has a couple of questions as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Susan and Stuart. One question in particular: if one of the advantages of being a member is that you do have those voting rights at Zone and for National Council, they're imminent now in terms of Zone 5, which we're a member of, and so on. If, and I'm not preempting here, I would want Council to know, given the imminence of them, if they were to rejoin today, would the rejoining be in time for them to vote on those appointments?
Yes, if you resolve to rejoin today, two things will happen. One, in terms of any payment, that will be prorated, so you won't pay a full year, you'll pay a portion of the financial year that's left, and I think that goes through from now through to May from memory, and you will be eligible to vote at a Zone meeting.
Oh, actually, you answered the second question first. Thank you very much, Stuart. That would be much appreciated by all of us.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from the floor? Thank you, Stuart and Susan. Thank you very much. We appreciate you here today. We'll discuss now within Council. And be in touch in due course, I suppose. Thank you very much. But you are welcome to stay, of course.
Thank you for the opportunity. We'll let you debate that.
Yeah, without us. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pete, do you want to talk to this some more?
Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I guess it's helpful to have heard from the President and the Chief Executive. In terms of just the voting, the President's position carries through until the next AGM, and so that's to ensure that there's continuity across the triennium. So Stuart Crosby, who's the President, he comes up, and I guess that's about July next year or whenever they have it. The representation in terms of the council, National Council, we get to vote for a member from the provincial sector, where in the provincial sector the others being the metros for the big cities, the rurals for the smaller districts, and the regional councils, so we're in that. And we also get to vote for the Zone 5, which is the upper one. So those are coming up. And I suppose it is a decision about the merits of being in the tent or out of the tent in terms of the benefits that LGNZ offers, is really the position you've arrived at, having heard that. Happy to take questions about the operation of LGNZ and its structure, but I'll leave it there.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I guess it would appear they had a tent within the tent though, didn't it? So there was a problem there. The structure, I guess it is important to support the local peak group that represents LGNZ, absolutely. But to be fair, in my mind, they failed when they weren't open and transparent with their members in regards to the three waters from the outset. And if they'd actually been pushed back a lot harder right at the very outset, that would have changed how the government actually were acting. There was no one else to go and talk to. I mean, who else were they going to? Were they going to be out or they're in? Well, actually, LGNZ is local government. There's no other lobby group. So they had to actually talk to them, and actually that's the time they should have got pushed back and pushed back hard. And half of this rubbish would not have got to where it is now. So it concerns me the same people are still there. They're talking another tune, but you know they've done what they've done, and unfortunately that's not a good place for me. So I guess yeah, that's what my thoughts are at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Councillor Piddington.
Look, there's no doubt at all that local government New Zealand dropped the ball. We can see that. But there's some balance there. We're going to go through the biggest change in local democracy that we've seen in years. And they are a group that represents us. As Alan said, the only group. You know, I think at this stage I'm favouring being inside the tent with those changes, because it does bring networking, education, opportunity for new councillors to be educated. No one else offers that. I agree with Councillor Burt and Councillor Booth, totally dropped the ball, but I think they have learnt a lesson, even they have said that, and it wouldn't happen again. So for me, on the balances, while we still oppose Three Waters and what the government's trying to do, we're the only one that left the tent. You know, we've still got communities for local democracy and those other important things, but maybe it is time on the balance to go back in.
Thank you, Councillor Piddington. And of course, we can go back in 12 months' time and review it if we want to. If we weren't happy, couldn't we? Councillor Pye.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure who can answer them, perhaps maybe the previous councillors, but I just wonder if we separate out the advocacy from the training and network they receive. Do you think that we get benefit or value from the training and networking side of it from our membership? And is that benefit enough for us to rejoin without considering a benefit of the advocacy? And then I do have a second question, if I may, after that, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Booth, who's going to answer that? Councillor Booth.
We did actually ask them, I looked into a review of our overall governance structure, and nothing, but we never did it. All right, so we actually haven't been using their services, as far as I'm aware, from a council group. That didn't happen last triennial anyway. So I'm not sure at a level down, but perhaps Beat can tell me about that. I'm not sure.
Specific, can I just ask you to just so I'm clear about the question, Councillor Booth?
Yeah, okay, so at the start of last triennial, Local Government New Zealand have a group that go in and they'll come into your council and they'll have a look at your overall governance structure and your leadership and your whole structure under your CE, okay, and give you advice in regards to that, how it lines up to the rest of other councils. I know we suggested doing that and we didn't do it, so for whatever reason. But perhaps there's another level that we actually utilise them further down the line.
So Council Mark, no, Council hasn't, Local Government New Zealand, and it's either through Local Government New Zealand or a subsidiary Equip undertakes Council Mark, which is an assessment of the governance structure and so on, as well as the operations, the strategic direction of a council. No, we haven't done that. A number of councils have. In terms of do we utilise, look, there are a number of opportunities that LGNZ does present for us to connect with sector people and to get their advice and so on. But they would not, Equip which is a subsidiary, would probably provide the services to us on a range of pay-as-you-go type services. But beyond that, the actual LGNZ body itself does provide a range of policy advice that is available to its members, and some of that's pretty detailed sort of policy and specific to the sector, advocacy, and the networking. I think that they're talking to are the opportunities that are presented at the zone meetings and the rural and provincial sector meetings, which occur quarterly throughout the year, throughout a 12-month period. And they are the ones where often members will talk and confer about what are the issues that are important to the various councils and how they connect, whether it's particular to councils in a region or more broadly across the sector.
Councillor Burt, you're answering.
Yeah, it's a very good question in terms of separating the advocacy. At the moment, we're in a position where advocacy is really what we need or want or have to have if we want to be in the tent. Being outside the tent, I had some discussions about it before, and I can see that potentially making changes, timing is a factor in terms of being able to be part of that process and maybe make change at the executive. In terms of training versus advocacy, to be fair, apart from going to some of the conferencing, which is, it is a really good place to network and everything, and we do that anyway as a result. I don't think we haven't used their resources to great effect, and we certainly, and certainly in my time in the last 9 years, there are aspects of it. But yeah, we do have to separate the advocacy, and the key here now is, given the timings, given our ability to affect change and be a voice for reason together as a collective around, lobbying this government. And the other timing I mentioned before around the election and what that means, that's probably what we have to think about today, and that's going to be the key, because it's really vexing me in terms of where we should land with this.
Thank you. You can answer to.
I was just going to answer Councillor Pye's question regarding training. So during my 6 years, I've attended one of their courses. The only other course I attended was through the Institute of Directors instead. I've attended one conference, which, I didn't get much bang for my buck, if I was going to be honest. Rural and provincial, really enjoyed that because it's like-minded community sizes and issues. So that's probably my wrap for the 6 years I've been here.
Thank you. You got another question, but before, I haven't forgotten you, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, firstly, congratulations, well done to the previous council that made the call that you did, because it was a hell of a call to make. Brave to step away from the norm, and I think what you did was the right move. I'm a new councillor, so for me it's a clean slate, and as much as I respect the decisions that you guys have made beforehand, I think from what I've heard today from both Stuart and Susan that they were sorry about what had happened. They've learnt lessons from that. We heard the word learnings mentioned a couple of times, and they do want to lobby on our behalf in the best way possible. So, you know, I think that there's been a line drawn in the sand, and I think it's time for us to move on and let them lobby for us. I think we've made the point, but I certainly would like to take advantage. And I don't know if we've taken enough advantage of the services that they offer or not, but I for one would like to be able to learn from LG NZ, and think it would be the right way for us to go moving forward. That's all.
Just to speed things up, it'll either go or it won't go. I'll move that Timaru District Council rejoins Local Government New Zealand.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Jackson. Do you want any further discussion before I put that motion to the floor? Put the motion. Councillor
So
Pye.
could I just ask one more question, or am I too late for that? I just wanted to ask a question of Bede, and it probably has been answered, but not specifically. Are there any benefits for the council officers of being a member of Local Government New Zealand that we need to consider? Because it's not just about us sitting around the table, it's about the officers as well.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pike. Look, on balance, there probably are benefits for us as officers, because there is quite a body of policy advice that LGNZ do that is available to its members, and that advice is available for us readily. I'll check with Mr. Lowe, but we get that really on demand when that advice is provided, and it does help inform the discussion that we put up in terms of having ready access to those who have tested areas. And so if you look at some of the big areas around resource management reform and so on, or where they've taken a policy initiative around housing, it does help officers inform the position, and it saves us having to do work. So there are benefits, and those benefits are tangible to us, to the officers, in terms of providing advice to the governing body.
Thank you, Chief Executive. So the motion is that that council agrees to rejoin Local Government New Zealand. Put that motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Want that noted, Councillor Booth? Carried. Right, shall we go back to 8.10, Timaru District Residents Survey. I would like to welcome Michael Hooker, Managing Director at Key Research, who will present some of the significant results. Michael, thank you very much for coming. And
I'm Anne Fitzgerald from the Strategy and Corporate Planning team. I'm just going to introduce the report and then over to Michael. But yeah, this is a biennial survey that Council's been running for a number of years. We've used Key Research for 4 of our surveys, and one of the benefits that we do find is they now do surveys for 20 plus other councils. So along with survey results for our own community, we get access to benchmarking data, which is useful for councillors and staff, I believe. So yeah, I am just going to hand over to Michael. The data is a little bit older than we anticipated. It's for the year ended 30 June, but for a number of reasons, with scheduling of reports on council agendas and then the election, that's the reason why we're a little bit late in presenting it. I will hand over to Michael.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today, Mayor and councillors. My name is Michael Hooker, as introduced by Emma. I'm the Director of Research at Key Research. So the format of my presentation today, I'll commence by going over the objectives of the survey, and then I'll move on to the method that we use to complete it, before looking at some of those high-level metrics and how they have performed and what the trends are there. We'll look at what's sitting in behind those in terms of driving those high-level perceptions, before we look at a couple of other topics of interest, and we'll also look at some benchmarking against other councils across New Zealand before we move on to the conclusion slides itself. And given the last item, and on a lighter note, this is a pretty good news story, so there's some good data to look forward to here. I'll press the right button there. Okay, so the survey sets out to measure residents' satisfaction with their performance across all of the services and facilities which are provided by the council. Importantly, we want to determine what we refer to as the drivers of satisfaction, and by doing that we want to identify where are the areas of focus in terms of improving perceptions of your performance. We want to measure the reputation of the council. And importantly, as Anne has already mentioned, we want to be able to measure changes in satisfaction over time. So we conducted a telephone survey. You'll see there we got an 11% response rate, 402 responses in total. The majority of those are conducted via landline. We weight the sample back so that it is representative of the geographic and demographic profile across the district. And you'll see also that we conduct the field work in 4 waves, and so this is essentially to account for seasonality and also to account for any topical issues of the day. Okay, so moving on to some of the high-level metrics here. So we've had the privilege and the pleasure now of conducting the survey for 4 times over the last 6-yearly period, and you can see here the thing that's standing out across each of these 4 key metrics here. We've got overall performance, reputation, overall service delivery, and value for money is a bit of a decline from about 2018 through to 2022. This is not altogether unsurprising, so we see this right across the sector here. Just these not significant declines, these little declines along the way, but we're hopeful now that we've got through what we refer to as a COVID unhappiness years, that once we get through a really nice summer, and hopefully COVID becomes a distant memory, we might see some of these measures start to pop up to where they have been previously. So we measured 59 attributes, 21 had improved in terms of perceptions, and 32 had declined. So these are the ones that are the best performing areas, the ones that achieve the highest levels of satisfaction amongst residents. We'll see some pretty strong scores here. So the highest is for the reliability of the sewage system, 95% of respondents scoring the council 7 to 10 for performance there, and we see strong scores as well for other significant assets provided by the council. Conversely, these are the areas which recorded the highest levels of dissatisfaction, and a number here to do with the interactions that occurred from residents contacting the council directly. And a little bit of a theme will develop throughout the presentation around this. This may well be an area to look at for improvement going forward. In terms of the areas for our biggest improvement, we see some interesting ones here around the infrastructure for stormwater management and flooding, some good perception improvements there, and also some perception improvements to do with those interactions with the council as well. The biggest decreases were around regulatory services and also some attributes to do with value for money, and we'll touch on those 2 particular components a little later in the presentation as well. So a few years ago now, we were laid down a challenge by local councils that we work with, who said to us, these scores that you're reporting back to us, are they good or are they not? And then secondly, what do we work on or focus on to improve them going forward? So we set out to develop a model, and we developed a holistic model because through all of our work in the local government sector, we knew that it was very difficult for residents to separate out the performance of the council in terms of service delivery from the performance of the elected members and the council staff, and also from the value for money that they got from the rates that they provide. So our model now incorporates all those cornerstone elements, and we have these questions which refer to each of these things in the survey that we conduct. And so the statistical model looks at the impact of each of those attributes upon overall performance itself. And it's telling us that for Timaru, image and reputation is having the highest amount of impact upon that score of overall performance. And with a satisfaction rating of 68%, it's also indicating to us that if you're able to improve that particular aspect there, you're likely to get the best uplift in terms of overall performance. The beauty of our model is that we can then step down into what we refer to as the sub-drivers or the sub-attributes of image and reputation. So if you were to say, yeah, that is something that we would like to focus on and try to improve them, what exactly about image and reputation is having the greatest amount of influence or impact upon that driver. And we can see here across the four that we're measuring, trust seems to have a reasonably high level of impact upon overall reputation, but its performance rating is lower than a couple of others within those sub-drivers. And so we'll say, well, maybe that's an element that we could look at to improve the overall image and reputation of the council. So driver analysis here on this particular chart is indicating for overall services and facilities which of these sub-drivers is having the greatest amount of influence upon that performance rating. And we can see that regulatory services, 31%, it's having the highest impact, but it has the lowest performance rating. And so there starts to be some clues showing themselves and revealing themselves here. So if you were to focus upon regulatory services, you're likely to get a good return in terms of that overall perception of services and facilities, which will flow through to those key metrics that the organisation measures itself on. So this is our priority matrix here. And basically what we're looking to do is to plot these attributes which have a high level of impact against their performance levels. And so the ones that are appearing in that top left quadrant are the ones which have a high level of impact. So residents' perceptions of performance, and these are highly likely to result in their overall rating of the council, but they have a low performance rating themselves. So they would be the areas that perhaps you would focus on. This is the reputation benchmark, and there's a couple of things that I just wanted to point out here in this chart. You'll see that there has been a bit of a decline since the last survey in 2020. It's not significant, but we'll see here the difference across each of the wards, and this is quite interesting. And we'll see this pattern throughout all of the data, through all of the attributes that we measure. We see that residents from the Timaru ward are much more likely to be satisfied with almost every single attribute than those from Temuka or the Pleasant Point ward. And those from the Geraldine ward fit somewhere in between the two of those. This is another unique part of our offering in the council survey space, and this is the reputation profile. So what we're doing here, this is a really neat little snapshot of how the community perceives your reputation. And this is a really strong profile, by the way. So we have 62% of all residents would be champions of the Timaru District Council, only 27% are skeptics. And so we're measuring here those four sub-drivers that I showed you earlier in the presentation. So there's the two soft measures, we refer to them as soft measures of vision and leadership and trust and faith. And that's your y-axis there, and the x-axis here is that what we refer to as the hard measures, which are core service delivery and financial management. So this profile is strong. It's declined, the champions have declined a little bit from 2020, the skeptics have improved a little bit as well, but it's a good result. And this is a really good result as well. So I mentioned at the top that it's a good news story. So there's a number of key metrics here where Timaru is at the top of the sector or close to it. The green line here is representing the best in class. This is across 18 other councils across New Zealand. The orange line is the worst in class. The silver line is the sector average. And on this particular chart, you've got yourself leading first equal with Stratford for overall satisfaction and leading alone for value of money. And there's a lot more data presented in the benchmarking report, and you'll see that on several of the aspects that we measure here, Timaru is right at the top and is often leading the class. The interesting point here is around inquiry handling, and you would have seen earlier in the presentation that I highlighted several aspects to do with interactions with the council, and they weren't positive. And you can see here the council actually sits below the sector average in terms of inquiry handling, so perhaps that's an area for improvement. We ask a question in the questionnaire which touches on, are there any comments that you would like to refer back to the council? There's a fairly standard set of replies here. Largest grouping was around the roading network and the footpath network. Nothing altogether surprising there. We often find when councils are performing well, the default position is to, for some reason or another, find dissatisfaction with the roading network. Okay, so to the conclusion then, we're very sound, high-level KPI ratings. We see good improvements in infrastructure, particularly around flooding and stormwater management. Decreases in perceptions across value for money and regulatory services. And there is something going on in the regulatory services space, because we found that the performance ratings for animal and dog control and also for licensing for cafes and restaurants had remained very consistent over the 6-yearly period. But satisfaction with performance on building consents and resource consents and liquor licensing has decreased significantly over that 6-year period. And we're talking 20-point decreases in levels of performance there. So there's something happening in that space. It's a really strong reputation profile, as I pointed out to you. The performance, according to our driver analysis model, is impacted significantly by image and reputation, and it's worthwhile being cognizant of that. And you'll see there from the slide there showed about the benchmarking across other councils, Timaru is very well placed. And then finally, just moving forward, we see that it's very easy for councils to take big steps backwards in terms of how residents perceive them, but it's very difficult to take big steps forward. So the focus needs to be on continuous improvement to make sure that you're staying ahead of where you are at this particular point in time. We find that communicating the value of the work that you do is very important in terms of affecting that overall image and reputation. Maintaining the reputation profile will be very important given its impact in the driver analysis that we did. And a focus upon those key reputational elements, trust and financial management, will help significantly there as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that good presentation. Comprehensive information here too, and I must admit, reading through it, I wasn't surprised to see that Timaru District is up near the top because we are the centre of the universe. But reading through some of the findings that were both positive and negative, and referring back to Temuka, no great surprises there from what I could see. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Pye?
Thank you. You said just at the end there that you've seen quite a decrease in the regulatory, the building consent and liquor licensing. Have you seen that in other councils, or is that specific to TDC?
I can speak about the performance of regulatory services, which is quite varied across a number of councils. A lot of them don't go down into that specific area of detail, so a little bit difficult to say.
Perhaps one comment that I would make on that, I think not a lot of people have an interaction with council on like applying for a resource consent or a building consent, yet we're surveying, you know, like a representative sample of the community. So could that be an element perhaps that they haven't had necessarily, it's not the people who've had the personal interaction who are saying it hasn't been such a good service?
Yeah, that's the reason why I mentioned that there was something interesting going on in that space, because in actual fact, users were more likely to be satisfied than non-users. So,
and I think in acknowledging that probably is a factor, our regulatory services, I know building control, for example, conduct like an exit survey. Users who've actually applied for a building consent or requested some sort of information sent a short survey, you know, gauging how they found the service and any suggestions from the staff. So, yeah, just something to bear in mind with those overall results.
Michael, you touched on COVID there. Just going into that in a little bit more depth, how much of that COVID tail really affected the engagement process, do you think?
by engagement are you referring to the?
Just the engagement with council regarding COVID.
Do you mean from the respondent's point of view?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say that where we talk about the COVID effect, it's about how we see these overall levels of perception just decreasing across that whole period of time. So that level of unhappiness and angst had crept in, and we feel as though it's just pervaded everybody's perceptions. So it may not actually have anything particularly to do with their interactions with council, but in general people have just become a lot more dissatisfied.
Councillor Burt, did you?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, that alone speaks volumes for us coming through with marginal changes and yet coming through that. And I just wanted to give some context for the regulatory space around the fact that never have we had such a massive and significant growth in building and the pressure obviously that would be going on without a consequential change in the resources we got to manage that is key to that. And you'd see that that's a touch point for potentially anyone that's in that place or has a connection to that place. It's interesting, the liquor licensing, I mean, in over 400 people, how many people apply for a licence and or would be in that space would be very limited. So I don't understand the context for how there's a reduction, but I don't understand the context for how the question would be relevant for so small a group, unless it's about our LAP and the accessibility to alcohol, but that hasn't changed for a long period of time.
Yeah.
I hope you didn't ring anyone in Pleasant Point.
I just want to make a comment about that though, because the questions asked are the whole 402 respondents. So some of them, a small proportion, are what you were referring to as users, but by far the majority are not. And this is the phenomenally interesting thing about these results is if by far the majority are and haven't been involved in applying for a consent or what have you, or a licence, for example, how come so many are dissatisfied with how the process is being managed? That's a really interesting finding.
I note that this report is to be received and noted, but I mean, to summarise, first of all, what should probably happen with a report like this? So we've obviously got, there's three things that popped up: trust, financial management, vision and leadership. So they've actually would appear to need some work, and obviously the last subject that we've just spoken about. So really, what should happen from here? Should we, it's all very well, we've just read a report and you've spoken about it, but how do we enact and actually take action on that? How would that normally, what would normally happen?
Well, we'll take a seconder for the motion then, shall we? Yes, you can answer that question then.
I was actually going to look there for a bit more analysis, I think, before we provide an answer to the question.
Would you like to comment on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's a great question actually, because that's why we exist, is to step you through these findings and these outcomes, and to work out what to do next, and hence the reason for all of our modelling. And the next step is to take away all the learnings and what we've pointed out here, and then to drill down further into the information and say, well, what exactly, when that fella talked about image and reputation, what did he mean? What can we learn from the verbatim which was sent back to us? And then how do we develop an action plan to address that going forward? There may only be 3 or 4 things that you need to focus on from the work that we've done to set in place a really good action plan for the next 12 months.
Yeah, I guess that's good. I think, yeah, we need to, rather than just having this, oh, that's very nice, let's walk away and not hear about it again, but we actually need to have an action point so that is followed up and something actually happens to make it all worthwhile. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time.
Yeah, look, I mean, look very broadly, and without going into a lot of detail, we do it at an executive and officer level. We do look at these, and then we look at how we can organise council to deliver and address some of these. So some of the initiatives we put in place, for instance, with our user experience and community engagement directorate, because we understand the importance of actually connecting with our community, and to that point about the narrative and what we're doing, why we're doing, and so on, and connecting them. Other parts in terms of the, in terms of the financial management, well, we produce regular management reports. We have rating assessed by Fitch on an annual basis, and so on, in addition to the audit. And then there are regular assurance engagements undertaken by various organs of government, such as Katahi, come and look at how we're spending their co-funding on our roading. So there are a range of them. Part of the art is getting it to the community to understand that these structures are in place in order to protect and to provide oversight of the assets and the money we have. And so a lot of it, I think, comes back to the points made about how do we tell the narrative and how do we get it out there. So as much it is about getting it out as to what we're doing, and that does involve something of an action plan. But we have looked to address it with various changes in the organisation.
Thank you very much. So the motion was moved by Councillor Booth, a seconder.
Oh, was it?
Sorry? Yeah, yes. Thank you. Second it.
I'll second it. I'd like to...
Another comment? Yep, sure.
I'd like to finish on a positive note there. 87% of Timaru people in that survey perceived that Timaru was at least as good a place as it has been in the last 3 years, and that's through the COVID period. That speaks volumes, and 88% perceived Timaru as mostly safe. There are 2 connecting issues that are always part and parcel of people's perception of what the places they live in. So they are very, very key things. But yeah, I'll second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Yes, you're quite right. It's not all. There's plenty of good news in there, isn't there? Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael and Anne. Now, item 8.11. Three Waters Better Off Funding Package Offer. I'll ask Mr. Dixon, Mr. Harper. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sirs. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Yep, thank you, Deputy Mayor and councillors. So this is, I guess, reconsideration of the Three Waters Better Off funding. So if you recall, we presented this last time. There was a recommendation that we go back to the DIA and try and negotiate some terms in regard to the agreement, and also seeking an extension of time to allow us to consider that. We have done that. The letters are accompanying the report. Basically, there is no negotiation of the terms and conditions available, because if they did it for this council, they'd have to do it for every other council in New Zealand. So it is just not practical. Plus the fact that it was in fact Local Government New Zealand who did a lot of the negotiation anyway of the terms and conditions of the agreement. But they did give us an extension of time, and that is basically to Christmas, or 31 December, but effectively Christmas. So we've now come back to the council to consider what has been negotiated, and basically confirm projects if you want to proceed. Ashley, do you have anything?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It gives us pleasure to bring this here with some clarification. It now distills down to whether council wants to participate or not. If it does wish to participate, we have 3 projects that council has resolved to be included, and then if you do wish us to participate, we have staff on standby to start work on the application tomorrow. We've deferred doing any of that until now, until we know that it's going to be have payback, and we have suggested that given the time frame and the need to determine how much allocation for tranche 1 goes to each of the 3 projects, and exactly the content of those projects, we've suggested there be four elected members be delegated authority to work with staff. So we don't see that as too much of as a workshop, but bounce ideas around and give some guidance. And so we've asked for that, and it's all set out in the 7 recommendations, and we can answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Piddington.
Thanks for that, guys. Look, to me, it's still a no-brainer like it was last time. We're getting free money, albeit we couldn't twist the DIA's arm. We can't let the community miss out on 4.97 million and 19 million in total when other councils have accepted it. I mean, that's going to go towards at least 2 major projects and some bike tracks. The stadium, we're concerned about cost increases. Same probably with the Eggentie Art Gallery. So I'm happy to move that as it stands with the group of 4 working out the details.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you. Just a question. So with the tranche 1, we don't have to divide that 4.97 into the 3. We're looking at the total amount being shared across the 3. Is that correct?
Yes, we will, but that will mean that tranche 1, we need to be reasonably well defined about how much of tranche 1 is to be allocated, and that doesn't mean to say all of it. If we look at in a couple of 3 weeks where we've got a plan together for each of those, we've looked at the content, especially of tracks and trails and so on, then we'll come up with some suggestions. It might not be the whole amount, but we will need to allocate it to each of them partially in tranche 1.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to second Councillor Piddington's motion.
Thank you.
We do. We get
I've
one.
got a question.
We
Did
get
both questions at
one
once?
question
Yeah.
into understanding orders. You still get a question. Go.
Yeah, that's right. We can still have discussion. Yeah.
Go.
Was it Councillor Scott or was it Councillor Burt?
Oh, Peter, I'm still
Sure.
writing mine down.
She's still running. I'll read yours. So last time there were 2 sticking points, and one of them was in relation to what the provisions were, and it escapes me what the 2 provisions were. One of them was in confidence and agreement. Let's put it that way. That was the terms of it. If we agreed, that's what we had to do. It basically left us hamstrung where we could not disagree over any aspects. It almost tied us down to the 3 water engagement aspect, and we had no confidence in that, but I'm not sure if you can enlighten me what that was. The second one was the fact that if we didn't take tranche 1, we were allowed to, when tranche 2 came on board, that we could combine them and would not lose tranche 1 as a totality of what was available, and that gave us some comfort around the fact that we had some more time up our sleeve to understand where this environment was going, what was changing, LG&Z, the government and all those sorts of things. Has that changed?
Thank you. I can answer those questions. I'll answer the second one first, and that is, can we defer and take up the offer of all of the funding in tranche 2? I notice, I do note that under the other, in my report, on page 137, I've got the preferred options, but I also do note that under other considerations, paragraph 32, there is a risk issue that council should consider, and that is there's little risk attached in accepting tranche 1. However, if council decides not to accept tranche 1 and the Three Waters reform subsequently stops or is significantly modified, then the 4.97 in tranche 1 may be lost. So I just reiterate that there is a risk. It might well be small, but that's the risk of not participating in tranche 1.
So what we're saying is it's a trade-off. If Three Waters continues, we lose $500 million off our bottom line. If it doesn't continue, we don't lose $500 million off our bottom line, but we miss out on $20 million.
I'm not sure about that because there's other factors. For example, if you lose so much money off your bottom line balance sheet, you also lose some of the debt that goes with that. And so there's a lot more factors in that than just what you've said.
Okay, yeah, so simplistic, but in terms of the quantum for the differential between those amounts, it's quite significant. And I do really take on board what Councillor Piddington said. You know, it is free money. The thing that does give me comfort, it's not defined that it has to be put towards Three Waters or water projects, which is good because that's one of those things where we had arm up our back when we accepted other amounts that had to be specific, so the government could say, see, didn't we say, look at all the money they're spending because they're so down on what they should be doing, and yet we had to spend it. So this gives me some comfort around the fact that it goes across really, really good other projects that we have. Thank you.
If I might also refer to your first question, which was, do we still have sufficient confidence to be able to state our views in respect of Three Waters even if we accept this money? And that is certainly still the case. It is reconfirmed in the DIA letter, pages 209 to 210. It does clarify council's position as not being constrained in that regard.
Yeah. The agreement itself, I think what your concern, Councillor Burt, was about a word I think used in the agreement saying that council shall collaborate with the now the reality is that we will still need to collaborate whether we take this or not, because they are submitting RFIs for information and we're bound anyway by the Local Government Act to provide that information. So.
Councillor Scott?
I just wanted to raise concerns over the pressures that will be put on staff, as in your point 25 in your report around their participation in the National Transition Unit. And I just need to be reassured that, we've had a workshop today, we've talked to all the staff in different units and the pressures that they're under, and I just want to be reassured that this is not going to have significant additional pressure on them to participate in this.
I can't give you that assurance. The very nature of this application process in the next 6 weeks, puts pressure on us, but not particularly staff in the Three Waters space. Right, this is stadium, Argentine, tracks and trails, so it's a different cohort of staff that will have pressure from this. We have a writer on staff who is really good at writing these applications. We've got her set aside for the next few weeks to do this. So I think this is manageable, but it certainly just adds a degree to the pressure that we're under.
And sorry, thanks Ash, that's appreciated. And also I know this will come down to the working group, sort of more talk, but I also want to just say that with my workings, in this particular proposal, a tranche 2 is when iwi engagement must come to the forefront. It needs to be in tranche 1. If we're actually going to, achieve these, then we do that right from the start. So that's just my point about tranche 1 and 2.
Thank you, councillor Scott. Do you have any more commentary? Councillor Booth.
Yeah, look, obviously I'm pretty much in line with what Councillor Piddington said in regards to we need to grab the money regardless, because if we don't grab that and get it as soon as possible, good chance that second tranche may not happen. My only concern is that we're putting the money in the right place. I understand also that Auckland actually they had their money for a while. They just applied and they got it, and they're spending it on whatever they want. And so I did mention just earlier on around enabling housing development and growth, focus on brownfield infill development opportunities. It's a pity we haven't got something. I mean, these other projects we're actually working on anyway. That you've suggested, I guess they're easy picks just to chuck some money at. But we really still haven't done anything in regards to our economic development and trying to assist new housing and housing opportunities within our district. And so I just wonder if there's, while I want to accept the money, I just wonder whether we're actually going to the right place from an economic point of view.
Thank you, councillor. I think that is something that a question I can't answer. It is up to elected members to determine which projects. At the 9th of August meeting, council resolved, and I've stipulated those resolutions, number 54 and 55, in the report. So that's council's decision that we're working on. If you wish it to be focused on some other activity, then right now is the time to resolve that. But it will give us some difficulty in preparing an application without a specific project with some known parameters that we can apply for.
One of the key things we need to remember is that we've got to put in a robust business case for the projects in there. So, sometimes a project that's not clearly defined will be difficult to put in a business case, and we don't even know where that growth area is at the moment. So,
well, yeah, I mean, we've got a development at the top of St Vinny's there ready to go, and we're the ones holding up the Highfield golf course. We know that we need to put that infrastructure. You've got a whole lot of detailed drawings, I'm absolutely sure of that, and we simply need to hurry along the golf course. And then we've got the property development, plus that's a double whammy, because you're going to have sections at the top of the council, at the top of the old golf course potentially, plus you're opening up Rooney's St Vinny's, which is X amount, is going to take care of all the drainage, which is a major problem now in regards to the sewer. And surely we're not far away from actually kicking that into gear. Is that not right?
I have a view that that's not quite right. Partially right, but not quite, on the basis that for the St Vianney's development to proceed, the developer needs to press the green button. He's got all his engineering consents. There is infrastructure renewals in the catchment that are planned and in the design phase as we speak. And if council, as I understand, is going to be provided with a report on the overall golf course repurposing in due course. But I don't see where there's an application out of this project that we can make to this better off funding at this time, because I'm not sure what it would be for.
Thank you very much. I see a wee red light over there.
Indeed. If we go back to a resolution passed prior to this, when we were talking about potentially spending this $5 million, and it is only $5 million, and we've just talked about potential tension on staff and what have you. We've got time constraints and everything to look at, and in that resolution, the potential projects were as follows. That's what's pulled them out and developed them as where they are. It is a small amount of money. With time constraints, we need to just focus. Those three are significant projects. I think we need to move on and agree with what the or resolution around all those recommendations. That's my position on it.
Councillor Jackson.
As a new councillor coming in, I think that those three things that you've chosen for the Better Funding package are great. Southern Trust Event Centre, Egantay Art Gallery, the cycling and walking tracks, as you say, you're ready to go with those three things, and I think they're a great fit for where we're at. Thank you.
Second tranche.
Councillor Booth, just need to wait for Mr Jackson to turn off his one. Now it's you.
Ready to go. Now, hang on. Egantay Art Gallery, that was closed in 2016, wasn't it? And we're far from having an outcome from that. So, and the sports stadium, the way we're doing our projects, there's another probably 8 years down the line. So now, let's get real. It's not happening. So is it this, we need to have something we can actually push the button and get money actually within 6 months. Will that application allow that to happen?
There is no, I'm sorry, if the question is, are we ready to go and push the green button, the issue with the applications is it is not required only for the physical works. The application can well be for design and for project management to get the projects ready to go. Right? And therefore the spend will start early-ish, right, on the preliminary work, but the big constraint and deadline is 30 June 2027.
That's right. Yeah.
That is, it's an end deadline, not a start deadline.
The tranche 2 funding does not come available until the 1st July 2024.
And it could well be only applications are called for then, because part of tranche 2 funding is actually funded by the new water entities.
Well, tranche 2's, we're talking about tranche 1. Yes. Auckland's already got theirs, all right, and they just made a whole lot of claptrap up to get it. And so, I mean, we need to get that before the election next year, basically. That's the main thing. Will that happen?
Well, the process from here is that we apply by the 31st of December, which effectively means by mid-December, and then we will get an indication of whether the application is robust enough. I expect some clarification to be requested, then we will get it approved, right, and then the projects will kick off. Now, what we include in those projects will be what we start spending the money on, right, in terms of the program that we submit. Right? The critical part's the next 6 weeks.
Just one quick question of clarification. I think this clarification is very important, but thank you for chastising me. The issue here is there a linkage between tranche 1 and 2? If you start spending on those 3 projects, it doesn't necessarily mean that the tranche 2 has to also go to those projects. That's my question.
No, but I expect that, especially for Project A, Southern Trust Event Centre, that there will be some carry through into tranche 2. I'm thinking that for projects B and C, that might not necessarily be the case.
Thank you very much. So the motion of recommendations 1 to 7 has been moved and seconded. I'll put that to the floor, please. Councillors, all those in favour, please say aye. No, there's 7. Oh, no, there's 7.
1 to 7 on my one.
Yep. Maybe that's what Councillor Booth's missing. That's quite all right. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.